The storm howled across the shoreline, waves detonating against the rocks like artillery shells. Kai, a homeless boy whose thin frame was lost in a too large hoodie, huddled near the flickering light of a driftwood fire. The cold was a physical thing, a thief stealing the warmth from his bones, yet he stared into the churning chaos of the sea, some deep instinct refusing to let him look away. That's when he saw it. A flash of pale fabric, a child's thin cry snatched and thrown by the wind, and two forms heaved onto the sand by the tide's brutal indifference. His breath hitched. A mother and her child. Instinct, sharp and immediate, cut through Kai's exhaustion. He scrambled forward, his worn sneakers instantly filling with icy water as he waded toward the figures. The little girl coughed, a desperate, racking sound, her small hands clawing at the wet sand. "Mommy." The woman beside her was terrifyingly still, waves slapping against her body with cruel nonchalance. Kai reached the child first, pulling her from the surf's greedy reach and wrapping her in his own tattered jacket, a pathetic but immediate shield against the cold. He turned back for the mother. She was heavier, dressed in what had once been a pristine, elegant coat, now a ruined, waterlogged weight. With a choked grunt, Kai dragged her free of the waves, laying her on the shore beside her daughter, his own chest burning from the effort. The girl sobbed, her tiny fingers clutching her mother's limp arm. Kai fell to his knees, his hands trembling as he pressed them to the woman's cold face. "Breathe," he whispered, the word a prayer. "Come on, don't you quit." He tilted her head back, positioning his hands on her chest and pushing down in a desperate, frantic rhythm he'd only ever seen in movies. For a terrifying, endless moment, there was nothing. Then, a choking gasp. Water spilled from her lips as she coughed violently, rolling to her side and dragging ragged breaths into her starved lungs. Kai sagged in relief, a shudder running through his own body. "Good," he whispered. "Stay with me." The little girl looked at him, her eyes wide and dark with fear, a child's simple calculus of trust and danger warring in her gaze. The mother's eyes fluttered open, glassy and wild. She saw the stranger leaning over her, a black boy, his hair matted, his oversized hoodie dripping, his face smudged with grime. A lifetime of warnings and ingrained prejudices flared in her expression. Don't touch us," she rasped, instinctively pulling her daughter closer. Kai raised both hands, backing away, a familiar sting of rejection flickering in his tired eyes. "I'm not gonna hurt you. The sea almost got you," the girl, shivering inside his enormous jacket, whispered. "Mommy, he saved us," but the woman's suspicion was a wall. Years of privilege had taught her that danger wore rags, that it lurked in the faces of the forgotten. She turned away, clutching her child. The wind cut across the shore, and Kai saw the truth she refused to acknowledge. Without shelter, without warmth, they wouldn't survive the night. He stood, gesturing weakly toward the distant glow of the city lights beyond the dunes. "There's a place. It's not much, but it's better than this." The mother tried to stand but staggered, her soaked clothes an anchor. The child, trembling, clung to the hem of Kai's jacket. Torn between her fear of the boy and the storm's merciless bite, the woman finally gave a single, reluctant nod. "Just keep your distance." Kai said nothing, only adjusting the jacket more securely around the little girl before leading them inland. They trudged across the dunes, the sand cold and heavy. Every gust of wind was a slap of wet fabric against their skin. The girl's teeth chattered audibly. Kai slowed his pace, his own hands raw and aching. "What's your name?" he asked gently. The girl glanced at her mother for permission before whispering, "Maya." Kai nodded. "That's a pretty name." The mother remained silent, her eyes fixed forward, watching him like a predator. Her silence was heavier than the storm. Kai didn't ask for her name. He figured she'd give it if and when she decided he wasn't a threat. After a grueling walk, they reached the city's frayed edge, where abandoned warehouses loomed like sleeping giants. Kai led them to a derelict building, its windows boarded over, its walls scarred with graffiti. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of damp concrete, but it was a blessed relief from the wind. In a corner, a small pile of blankets and a dented lantern revealed Kai's hidden world. His home. "It's not much," he muttered, a flicker of shame in his voice. "But it'll keep you warm." The woman hesitated at the entrance, her posture rigid. But when Maya let out a full-body sneeze, she relented, ushering her daughter inside. Kai dug through his meager collection of scavenged treasures and pulled out a battered thermos. "Still warm," he said, pouring a thin stream of what looked like tea into a tin cup. He held it toward Maya. The mother's eyes narrowed instantly. "Don't touch that," but Maya, too cold and miserable to obey, reached for it with trembling hands. Kai quickly pulled back, setting the cup on the concrete floor between them. "Your choice," he said softly. After a long pause, the woman picked it up, sniffed it suspiciously, and then handed it to her daughter. Maya drank greedily, a little color returning to her pale cheeks. The mother watched Kai the entire time, her mistrust a palpable force in the small space. As the lantern flame cast dancing shadows on the cracked walls, Kai sat apart, giving them space. He studied the woman discreetly. Even soaked and ruined, she radiated wealth. The cut of her coat, the glint of expensive jewelry still on her wrist. She didn't belong here. "What were you doing out there?" he asked quietly. She stiffened. "That's none of your concern," Kai nodded. Fair enough. Silence settled over them, broken only by Maya's small hiccups as she finally drifted into an exhausted sleep, cocooned in the ragged blankets Kai had offered. Kai stretched out on the bare concrete, his back aching, but he made no move to take any comfort for himself. Sleep wouldn't come. His mind kept replaying the image of the churning surf, the limp body in his arms, the little girl's terrified eyes. He knew wealth when he saw it. But wealth hadn't saved them tonight. He finally dozed off to the sound of Maya's steady breathing and the quiet, distrustful rustle of her mother, who kept herself positioned as a barrier between her child and him. Morning light filtered through the cracks in the boards, gray and cold. Kai woke to find Maya sitting cross-legged, staring at him. She whispered, "You look like one of those guys from the adventure books." He managed a hoarse chuckle. "Don't think they sleep on concrete," her mother stirred, her eyes instantly finding Kai and hardening. "Stay away from her," she snapped. Kai raised his palms. "I just saved your lives," he said, the words sharper than he intended. Her cheeks flushed with anger. "And now you expect what? Gratitude?" Kai's jaw tightened. He said nothing, choosing instead to gather his things and step outside into the waking city. He could leave them. He'd done more than enough. But when Maya peeked her head through the doorway, her expression open and trusting, he knew he couldn't walk away. He went back inside, his voice softer. "There's a place to get food nearby." "I'll get some." The mother hesitated, but Maya whispered, "Mommy, please." Finally, she nodded stiffly. "Go. But come back." Kai returned an hour later with a small bag containing bread, bruised apples, and a few cartons of milk he'd managed to get from a kindly bakery owner. He set the food down, watching Maya's face light up. She tore into the bread with an eagerness that made his own stomach ache. Her mother ate with a practiced, measured grace, though her hunger was obvious. For the first time, her gaze softened, just a fraction. "Why are you helping us?" she asked quietly. Kai shrugged. "Because someone has to." She stared at him, confused by the simplicity of it. In her world, every action had a motive, every favor a price. In his, survival sometimes demanded kindness. As the day wore on, the storm subsided to a persistent drizzle. Maya explored the warehouse, her innate childlike wonder turning the broken space into a kingdom. Kai busied himself reinforcing a corner against the drafts. The mother, wrapped in blankets, watched them both, a queen stranded in a desolate, foreign land. Finally, she spoke. "My name is Rosalind." Kai nodded. Kai, the exchange was brief, but it shifted the air. Names were bridges, however fragile. Maya clapped her hands. Now we're friends. Rosalind's lips pressed into a thin line. That night, Rosalind kept her daughter close, but she didn't flinch when Kai sat nearer to the lantern's small pool of warmth. Maya, exhausted, fell asleep quickly. Rosalind's eyes lingered on Kai. "You've lived like this for long?" she asked. He shrugged. "Too long," she frowned. "You're just a boy. You don't belong on the streets," he gave a bitter, hollow laugh. "The streets don't ask for a resume." Her lips parted, but she said nothing. For the first time, she considered how little she understood about a life lived outside her climate-controlled world of boardrooms and private cars. The next morning, trouble found them. Kai returned from a scavenging run with a fresh bruise blooming on his cheekbone and a split lip. Rosalind's eyes widened. "What happened?" He wiped a trickle of blood with the back of his hand. "Ran into some guys who don't like sharing territory." Rosalind's stomach twisted. Maya gasped, rushing to his side. "You're hurt," Kai forced a smile. "I've had worse." Rosalind's mistrust was at war with a growing, reluctant sense of gratitude. He had no obligation to them. Yet he had returned, bruised and bleeding. He had chosen to come back. As dusk fell, rough voices echoed outside. Kai stiffened, holding a finger to his lips. Rosalind clutched Maya, her heart pounding. 3 older, rougher-looking men filled the doorway. "Thought we told you to clear out, kid," one of them sneered. "This is our spot." Kai rose slowly, placing his thin body between the intruders and the mother and child. His voice was low but firm. "Not tonight." Rosalind's pulse hammered in her throat. For the first time, she felt safer with this boy than she would have without him. "Got yourself some company, huh?" another man taunted, his eyes raking over Rosalind. Her blood ran cold. Kai's fists clenched. "Leave them out of this," the leader laughed. "Or what? You gonna fight all 3 of us?" Kai's voice dropped. "If I have to." Rosalind held her breath. She had judged him as a piece of refuse, broken and lost. But now she saw the steel in him, the kind forged in the brutal furnace of survival. He might fall, but he would not break. The confrontation ended only when a distant police siren wailed, scattering the men like roaches. Kai sagged against the wall, sweat beading on his forehead. Rosalind stared at him, speechless. Maya ran forward and hugged his leg fiercely. "You protected us," she cried. Kai managed a weary smile, ruffling her hair. Rosalind's throat felt tight. The words, "thank you," were trapped behind a lifetime of pride. Instead, she whispered, "We can't stay here." Kai nodded. "I know another place." Safer. Rosalind looked at him, dirty, bruised, a child himself, and wondered how someone with nothing could still find so much to give. They left under the cover of darkness, Kai leading them through a labyrinth of shadowed alleys. They reached a crumbling church, its stained glass windows like shattered jewels. Inside, the air smelled of dust and forgotten hymns. In a secluded corner, more blankets and a few candles marked another of Kai's secret havens. "No one comes here anymore," he said. Rosalind shivered. "We shouldn't be here," Kai shrugged. "We shouldn't be anywhere, but here we are." He lit a candle, the glow painting his young face with shadows that made him look both fierce and fragile. As Maya slept, Rosalind finally asked the question that had been haunting her. "Why are you doing this? You don't know us. We have nothing to give you." Kai leaned against a stone pillar, a weary silhouette. "I didn't do it for payment," he murmured. "You needed saving." Rosalind processed this. In her world, transactions were everything. But his voice held no angle, no bargain. Just a simple, unvarnished truth. And that frightened her more than any lie. Later, as rain pattered through the broken roof, Maya crawled into Kai's lap. "Tell me a story," she pleaded. Rosalind tensed, ready to intervene, but the trusting look in her daughter's eyes stopped her. Kai cleared his throat. Okay. Once, there was a boy who built a ship out of starlight. He sailed the night sky, but a great storm came and shattered his ship. He fell to earth and had to learn to walk on the ground, always looking up, trying to remember how to find the stars again. Maya tilted her head. Did he ever fix his ship? Kai smiled faintly. He was working on it. Maybe he just needed some help. Rosalind felt an unfamiliar warmth spread through her chest. Their fragile peace was shattered the next day. A sleek black SUV cruised slowly down the street outside. Two men in sharp suits got out, their eyes scanning the area. Rosalind froze. Kai saw it instantly. You know them? Her lips tightened. Business rivals. They've been after me for months, Kai swore under his breath. He grabbed her arm, pulling her deeper into the church's shadows as they ducked through a maze of back rooms and crumbling hallways. Behind them, men shouted, their footsteps closing in. Run! Kai yelled, scooping Maya up into his arms. They burst out a side door and into an abandoned factory complex. Rosalind's lungs burned, but Kai never slowed, carrying Maya as if she weighed nothing. When they finally collapsed in the shadows of an old library, Rosalind gasped, "Why are they after me?" She finally confessed, the words tumbling out. "I exposed them. Corruption, fraud. Millions of dollars. It was a subsidiary of my own company, a place called Carter Dynamics." The name landed like a stone. Kai went still. "Carter Dynamics," he repeated, his voice suddenly flat and cold. He looked at her, his eyes dark with a history she couldn't comprehend. "My dad worked there. He was a foreman. There was an accident, faulty equipment they refused to replace. He never walked right again. We lost everything after that." The floor seemed to tilt beneath Rosalind's feet. The abstract injustice she had been fighting suddenly had a face, a name, a family. This boy, this child who had saved her, was a victim of the very rot she was trying to excise. I didn't know," she whispered, the words utterly inadequate. "Now we fix it," Kai said with a simple, devastating finality. The men found them an hour later. They burst into the library, confident and cruel. "We just need a conversation," Rosalind, the lead man, smiled, a predator's grin. Kai stepped between them, a wall made of bone and righteous anger. "They see you," he whispered to Rosalind. "They don't see me. I'm just the shadow they're about to trip over." The first man reached for her. Kai moved with a startling quickness, not with trained force, but with the desperate, efficient violence of the street. He used the man's own momentum to send him crashing into a bookshelf. A second man lunged, and Kai sidestepped, tripping him into a pile of debris. "Stop!" Rosalind commanded, her voice ringing with the authority that had built an empire. The men hesitated, but sirens, thin at first, began to swell in the distance. Her lawyer had come through. In a final, desperate move, one of the men grabbed Maya, holding her as a shield. Kai went absolutely still. "Don't," he said, the single word carrying the weight of all he had lost. It wasn't a threat, it was a promise. Rosalind started talking, her voice calm and cutting, listing statutes, prison sentences, the names of judges. And while she spoke, Kai moved, circling like a phantom. Maya's eyes were locked on him. On his count of 3, he created a diversion, a loud crash to their left. The man glanced away for a fraction of a second. It was all Kai needed. He lunged, not at the man, but at his arm, wrenching it just enough to make him cry out and loosen his grip. Maya scrambled free, straight into Kai's arms. Police flooded the doorway. The men in suits were cuffed, their swagger gone. The lead detective took in the scene, the billionaire, the terrified child, the corporate thugs, and the bruised, defiant boy holding them all together. He looked at Kai. "You okay, son?" Kai just nodded, clutching Maya tightly. "We all will be," Rosalind answered for him. By evening, the story was everywhere. But the narrative had shifted. It wasn't just about a billionaire in peril. It was about her savior. At a press conference, Rosalind stood at a podium and spoke about systems that crush people and debts that money can't repay. And she spoke about a boy who had saved her twice, and once, years ago, without either of them ever knowing. She said his name, Kai, not once, but 3 times. When a reporter asked, "Isn't he just a homeless kid?" Rosalind's gaze was unwavering. "He is a hero," she said, "who our city failed." Offers poured in. But Rosalind made him one that mattered. "Help me build something real. A new kind of shelter, for kids like you. A place that's safe. A place to start over." Kai hesitated, then nodded. "Real work," he said. "Real work," she promised. They opened it 2 months later, a refurbished brick building not far from the library. The sign on the door read, "The Harbor." Kai wasn't the director, but he was its heart, the one who could speak to the fear and anger of the kids who walked through its doors because he had lived it. On opening day, Maya, beaming, pinned a crooked, handmade badge on his hoodie. "So you remember you're the captain," she whispered. He touched it like it was a medal. One evening, they went back to the beach where it all began. The ocean was calm, the sky streaked with the colors of a healing bruise. Maya chased the gulls. Rosalind stood at the water's edge, shoes in hand. Kai watched the waves, no longer seeing a monster, but a force of change. "You saved us," Rosalind said, the words simple and true. "Twice," Maya added, running up to them. Kai shook his head, a small smile finally reaching his eyes. "We saved each other." The sun sank below the horizon, and for the first time in a long time, the world felt like it was finally, correctly, arranged.